Are about to get into it with Chris Witecki talking about astrology on Astro Mondays, which is happening right now. We're here every single week, and Chris helps us break down what is going on for the week, hence why we do this on Monday. I'm super excited to talk to him because on my app, the Serious Joy app, the weekend was time for reflection and not time for action. I really felt that, and this whole week is sunny. It's active, and so Strongest Stone Muscles is asking, when will I get a new job? Yes, that is a very good question to ask, and also to contemplate on, because that is one of the major attributes of us as humans, is to contemplate, is to introspect. And so starting with the question, when will I get a new job, is an amazing place to be. Oh, he's giving me his date of birth. I'm not the wizard. Waiting for Chris here to bring him on, and he will have more to say. I'm just validating your question. Any other questions that I can just say that's a good question for that you guys are having? Maybe I can, if you guys put them in the question box right now, we can bring them up for Chris once he is here. Actually, if one of you guys can send this to, I will send it to Sirius SJ. There we go. Happy New Moon, step 19, Libra. That's actually what I am as well. Step 19, Libra. We were at one of Chris's expos or conventions. I don't know what to even call it. It was a meeting of the minds, and he separated us all into our step groups, and it was amazing because everybody who was in our groups was exactly like it. And then I talked to my wife's group. They were all super loud and super active and super progressive, and they all got each other's numbers. And in my group, everybody was scared to talk. What's
Hey,
up, Chris?
buddy. Do you remember what group you were in? What step number were you?
19.
Oh, you're 19. Yeah. Yeah, 19 at 10. Thank you. That was Unite the Light. Which,
Unite the light.
yeah, which is, we just created that this year to bring light workers together.
Yeah, it was amazing. And it was funny to see the differences of the people because it's super real. There was actually, I wouldn't say an intruder, but like jokably saying it was an intruder. It was like somebody from a different step group in our group, and completely different. She was yelling and screaming, and all the other people in our group were kind of like, there was people even passing, like, no, I don't want to introduce myself. It's too loud in here. And I was like, oh, all these people are like me, kind of shy in a way.
Yes. And that 10 is a little shy because 19 nets to a 10, which is really your family, is your 10, really. You're part of the 10 family, which comes from 10s, 19s, and 28s, right? Those are the three
Right.
versions of 10s. But that zero on the end of the 10 is a vulnerability. It's a sensitivity. It's an openness to the outer world. So, any net 10s or anyone with a zero on the end of their number, they tend to just are a little apprehensive and cautious before they engage, right? And you were probably paired with Scorpios, the zeros. And zeros feel like they have the right to cross your zero because they're a zero and that's their number. So they feel like they can cross your without asking permission. Like their God-given right.
And that's a Scorpio.
That's a Scorpio. Yes. But to be very specific, it's Scorpio energy applied on the very top of a personality. So it's
Right.
that final layer. So, it is Scorpio, but it's a subtle Scorpio at the right
And
place.
it's not necessarily a Scorpio sun sign.
No, it's a Scorpio vibration that's added to your Libra. So
Um,
all your like easygoing comes with like a nice glass wall, like the Pope.
So I do want to say that I'm not one that has ever been interested in knowing things. That's just been my personality. So even things like astrology, I've been just not caring to know. And this weekend, but I always check the weather. Like I always check the weather, and because I'm always going outside, like that's where I find myself. And I was checking the weather. The next 7 days are extremely amazing here in California. And Caro was talking about being tired, and that's just how, like, this last weekend, being tired. And I was like, yeah, I am as well. And I just happened to go to Serious Joy, the website, and I was like, I wonder what this thing that Chris is always talking about and Carolina's always talking about, what it says about the astrological weather right now. And you actually have, so anyways, I downloaded the app and I became a member, and it's amazing because you actually do have like weather forecasts. Like they're actually like laid out like weather emojis,
Yes, we
which
use
is
weather maps. Yeah, and in my next version of my show, I'm going to actually go in front of the green screen and be like, "We got a Saturn front moving in here. It's going to be cold." Like I'm going to do the whole 9 yards and just be the astro weatherman. Yeah, because when I got into this profession, I realized just an amazing coincidence that like your moods are very much like your emotional weather, and and so I borrowed from weather terminology and weather explanations, because everyone just intuitively had that already built in their life, like from just going like you. And so it
exactly.
just boom, 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 it just kind of fits right in. Now, what's going to blow your mind is when you start to see like it getting sunny. When I predict sunny, it's sunny there. There's a lot of times where, certainly on the storms, if I predict a storm, quite often local people have storms in that they literally manifest in their personal, in their physical life. So it's interesting when you see those parallels.
No, there is parallel. Like right now it's sunny, and then it's sunny on your app as well.
Yes.
And so is that the same for everybody in the entire world?
So what we do is the layer you're seeing on the site right now is for the whole world. So that's like the collective consciousness, meaning like when you go out to 7-Eleven and you run into someone at the park, overall, that's the theme of the planet. And that's putting pressure on you. So the next layer, it's not active yet, is you'll switch to personal, and then it'll give you 5 days for your personal forecast that's happening underneath the other forecast. So layered forecasts, basically.
Cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
What's going on right now for this week for people?
Yeah. So we are in the beginning of September, and we had quite a shift over the weekend. Like major long term. Really, yesterday was when the what the long term shift was. And I'll start with the. Actually, I'll talk about the weekend. I'll talk about that shift was. So this is the I become state of awareness, also known as Virgo. Virgo is the part of your soul that makes it real. So Virgo makes the body. Virgo makes all the body, everything in the body. Virgo makes, the reality as we see it, the virtual reality. I mean, this is reality, but it's virtual. It's what turns light waves into an image. Like Virgo is what makes it all real. And so in each stage of Virgo, we make, we unreal things and we real things. So we take things out of reality. Like that's not real to me. That's dead to me. I no longer, and we call this becoming. I no longer want to be this. I no longer want to become this on the inside. I don't want to become angry every time my boss gives me criticism. I don't want to become an asshole every time I drink. I don't want to become, so it's all these things that you become on the inside, but really it's the things you become to yourself. So like you become cold to yourself or distant. These are negative things that can happen, right? Where we, maybe sometimes we become hard on ourselves because it's a means of self-discipline. So we become hard. We learn that early on. So every time you go through the first 11 steps of Virgo, which is literally the becoming of who you are on the inside, that's where we are this week. You have a little debate with yourself, as to whether or not you really want to become that anymore. Okay. And that was last week. So last week we were going, we were running into things where something got us angry or something got us sad or we got overtired because we overworked or, we just mismanaged us. And the other aspect of this is the opposite of I become is Pisces, I sense. Okay. and opposites always work together. So what this means is everything you have always become, like what you became as a child into a young boy, into a teenager, into a young man, every time you became those things, you were influenced by what we call your karma in Pisces, where you were influenced by subconscious things in your soul that you weren't aware of, obviously, subconscious, that were still making you feel certain ways to avoid certain things. So my point is that this year, because we had a very huge clearing in Pisces over the last year and a half, we've cleared out a lot of those things that were subconscious triggers, sorrow, depression, just things that we can't explain, but we go through. So this year, in the I Become of last week, it was the first time that people are really becoming free of their karma. They're in their inner world was becoming free of their stress, free of their karma, free of their hangups, and free of their problems, right? So it was a major shift. And what's interesting is, so we did that. We're not fully fixed. Like tomorrow is when we're done with the new inner self. Okay, so step 11 is tomorrow. It starts it starts late tonight, and so you literally start to feel yourself morph and become this new person at the very last step. By the way, it's super subtle, and then the last step, the universe is sort of like, "Are you going to do it or not?" Sort of challenges you, and usually you start to fall down the path of where you don't belong. Looks like you're coming back here.
Yeah, I see myself frozen, but I can hear you fine.
Aha, and you became reanimated. Um, so we've empowered ourselves with this new becoming, but the icing isn't on the cake until tomorrow. And so between today and tomorrow, you said you're going to become more responsible about sleep. Something may prevent you or get in the way of it. And so there's a little bit of a challenge in the next 24 hours from the universe. And the thing about that is because the become state of awareness is so real that you can't change it without seeing an effect in your life. Virgo's the one time where you see the effect right away, right? The repercussions, frozen. And so in this last hour of becoming, the old part of you that was just as real sort of arm wrestles the new part of you that wants to be. And there's this sort of final test at step 11, which is the next step of whether or not which way you're going to go. You'll be sort of tempted by both ways, and just habits alone and body habits and health habits. This would be a day that you first cheat on your diet, would be tomorrow. You'd want to cheat. And the formula is you choose the path that loves yourself and loves yourself some more. That's the secret to step 11. So, and there has to be 2 doses of love, because the first dose usually eradicates the pain, the failure, the wound, whatever. The first dose is a healing dose of love. You got to do a shot of love to heal. But then you got to do another shot of love to grow past where you were. So in Virgo, you have to sort of double up and love yourself some more. Virgos are ruled by step 11. Virgos are 2 Leos that want 2 different things at the same time. That's what a Leo is. That's why they want it all. They have a hard time like figuring out which way to go, and that's part of what they are doing, is like learning the most, finding the thing they love the most, or finding the qualities that make it better than the other. So they're constantly sort of shopping. But the point I want to bring up is, as we were coming into our new I Become this weekend, we had 2 major global things happen. So one global thing that happened was a planet called Uranus retrograded, which the thing about that is Uranus is the energy that's like always telling you to go, go, go. You can do better. You can be smarter. You can be faster. And so it puts a pressure on us that we interpret as self-motivation. Like, I'm really just motivated to get this thing done. Right? I don't know where it's coming from. And we in astrology, we say it's coming from Uranus right now in Taurus. It's promoting us to build a better life. So like, the growth that Human Garage did this year with World Tour and all this stuff, and the growth that our brand did with, Unite the Light, that was all fueled by Uranus saying it's time to build these new things. Well, on Sunday morning, Uranus went retrograde, which means the universe was like, okay, we're going on a break now. It's up to you. So one of the big things that happens is we're used to having this energy kind of just inspire us to get up in the morning. And now, as Uranus is retrograde for about 5 months, you have to find that in you on your own. So it suddenly makes, it's just becoming great. And you take the wind away, you take the fire away. So it's a little bit of a challenge to become your new person, because one of your helpers is on vacation.
this is what you were alluding to, that something big was going to happen in the beginning of September. Is that
Yes. And,
is that what we're
well, that
talking
was the
about?
first step. That was the setup. So first God goes, let me just remove the help real quick. And you're like, where's the help going? What are you doing, God? What's about to happen? Hey. So there's like suddenly it's a little bit harder. And then what we call the theme of this week is Pluto strikes back. And that's because Pluto, which is the slowest planet in the solar system, which means it represents decades. It literally represents a decade and a half of humanity, one Pluto spot. So, you know, this isn't correct dates, but everyone born from like 1970, 1985 might have the same issue. So 15 years. And then the next 15 years, they all have the same issue. So it brings together a generation, right? Um, Pluto is about to make it actually just moved back into Capricorn for the very last time in our life at 29 degrees, Gary's degree. So it's at Gary's step number, for instance. You guys got a whole bunch of 29s in your group. All the 29s are going to be a bit rattled, by the way, because the 29 energy itself has become nuclear with Pluto there. Pluto is the force of recycling. So, Pluto's the energy that breaks down the stuff that's obsolete, that's no longer necessary, breaks it down into its primary components, and whatever it breaks down is not fitting within the new rules of where the universe is going. So Pluto is the big rule maker. It gives you the final yes or no on something. All right. So with Pluto going back to 29 Capricorn, that means when it comes to power, pushing power, abusing power, not going far enough, neglecting others from power, basically all the abuses and the miracles that you make with power is 29. So anything that is a miracle or an abuse. Pluto going back to 29 is basically saying, okay, this is your last time, your last chance to address your power decisions correctly in the universe, right? So what this does is Pluto sort of starts to melt the boundaries around corrupted power. All right. What's melt the boundaries? Melt the boundaries is someone sent your business plan to Wikipedia. Uh-oh. Things like that happen if you are on the side of against humanity or against the principles of spirituality, which is basically 29 is your ego, 9 overriding your emotions, 2. So if your ego overrides your emotions, you have abused your power inside of yourself. That's what 29 is. An abusive 29 is one that pushes aside your own feelings and sometimes, goes for the power outside of yourself by, robbing other people of energy or stealing the attention in the room, different ways of stealing the attention or football. But it's also things like, a drug company, doing a false double blind study, and they just ignore the feelings of all these patients underneath them. They ignore the pain that it's going to cause, down the line of their experiments, right, and things like that. So when there are abuses of power, Pluto at 29 is basically going to erode away whatever defenses those dark people or dark things were using as a defense. Pluto basically says to the defense, stand down. And what that means in a literal sense is, the evil layer of Dr. Evil, suddenly the power goes out on his gate, just breaks. You just see things that were protecting the dark or protecting the wrong suddenly just sort of melt. So what it means is, in a practical sense, I gave you the long definition. Thank you for your patience. Is we're about to see a bunch of fighting for power between now and the end of November. It stretches through the elections and into November 20th. It's the final lap of Pluto in Capricorn. Okay.
And what is that? So there's definitely that happening in society, right? Abusing power. But then you're talking about us also fortifying a decision for our life. Is there a way that we have that same energy within us, like we're maybe self-sabotaging or abusing other people? Is like, how does that relate to an individual person?
Well, okay, this is an extreme case. So for most people who are not going after extreme power, okay, so if you're not trying to control the whole neighborhood in the HMO, you're not overreacting. overreaching. So if you're not overreaching, well, everything I just said is moot. You're not even in the danger. You're not flying. You're not Icarus flying too close to the sun. You're way below that degree. It doesn't matter. Okay, so for most people, it comes down to integrating everything they've learned about power into like a synergy, just a flow. And that would mean everything for the last 15 years. So the last decade and a half, 15 years, Pluto was in Capricorn for 15 years. It entered in 2008. So from 2008 until 2024, we were being told to change the way we go about power. And every human being has been working on this, which is, all sorts of ways. The biggest, when Pluto was at its most powerful in the last 3 years, was on January 12th, 2020, when Saturn and Pluto conjoined, which is a major issue, Saturn and Pluto coming together. And it was just a month later that we had COVID. So the greatest abuse of power we've ever seen in our lifetime, the greatest overreach we've ever seen in our lifetime, from what I can tell. And so, that's where, so power can go corrupt. So I would say that, people who have lied and abused their power, like since COVID, yeah, your form will be, your tax form will be discovered. They'll find out you're a receptionist because you didn't give her a raise is going to go to the press. Like, it just melts away the false protection you had to hide your abuse of power. Now, there's also another definition of this, and that is the innovation of power itself, the redynamics of power. And the most interesting example I saw since Pluto has returned back to 29 is Robert F. Kennedy's campaign. Because, I'm not for or against any candidate right here on this show, but, he announced that he's an independent running, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, in all the swing states where I'm challenging the outcome, I'm going to withdraw from the race. And I'm going to tell them all to vote for Trump. All my people to vote for Trump. So he basically, a third-party candidate says, in these states, go with this guy. In my states, go with me. So he created a very complicated, but you could say brilliant stroke of power. The old power structure was you're this party or you're that party. There was no collaboration if it goes this way and collaboration if it goes that way. That is a very complex boundary, right? It is a very sophisticated boundary. And so you're going to see with Pluto 29, the brilliant people getting their way around the fences with Pluto at 29, allowing them to sneak around the protection. And actually, those people who were underdogs now find a way to the top. So that's an interesting thing for people at home too. If you are, if you're getting a glass ceiling and the world's telling you can't, Pluto 29 says, oh, you can. You just don't know what it is yet.
That's an amazing example because he got out of the game essentially, and he's playing by different rules that he made up and he created.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, it's he no longer is just in the options of win lose, because there's a third option where he's also a partner with a potential winner, which then
right.
Yeah,
which then he plans to, I think it's the health. I mean, he's going to be in charge of all of health, right? So
make America healthy again is his slogan.
Really?
Now.
No kidding? Wow, I didn't know that. That's hilarious.
Yeah,
and brilliant.
Is what he's saying. And again,
you're one of those
I don't even vote. So before people start
Yeah.
saying that we're for or against, like, I've never registered to vote in my life. This is all I'm just viewing it. We're talking about it.
And it's great football. I'm like, holy crap! I didn't know. I'm just watching football. I'm like, I didn't know a quarterback could do that. And he's also, and then that's a funny thing. So if he gets in that seat for Trump, he's going to now go after all the other 29 abuses because he has a personal fascination with that. And if you look at his chart, he's designed to go after corrupt power. That's what he's designed to do. He's a bulldog that's designed to go after it.
Yeah, I mean, he's the one that sued Monsanto and won. And that's like big in my business where we're working with superfoods, removing glyphosate. And so I've been following him for a while, which is what he does. He's leveling the playing field.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
So basically what happened over the weekend was just when you become this new version of yourself, God changes the rules, takes away your innovation energy, and says you got to face anywhere you haven't done your power before you've abused your power or overreached or whatever, before you even become this new person. So it put a lot of stress on you, I think, the conscious system and the squeeze on it. But I also think it's going to work to our advantage.
Yeah, I felt like I just needed to rest this week,
Yes,
which
everyone
is
felt
really
that
not
drain.
like me. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like me. It was almost, I was resisting it for a little bit, until, like I said, I like read it on my phone from Serious Joy. I was like, okay, I will put my trust into this.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
yeah. The so before Pluto, we were talking about, like you just said, ourself
Uh,
and
mhm.
getting the help yanked away from us.
The innovation, the inspiration energy. You've got to motivate yourself now. I would argue that your fatigue was the loss of that energy.
Maybe that, I mean, that's accurate. It definitely so. And then today I had to wake up and do something that I normally don't do. Like in my business, like in order to generate more momentum, that you can go back to cold calling and warm calling, and that's what I forced myself to do this morning because I felt that, I guess, the safety net is gone, right? So it's like, okay, I got to go back to the basics, which I'm it's not I would only be doing that if it was necessary, and so I felt necessary this morning, but I also did it, so I'm a little bit proud of myself of what I've done so far today.
You should be, yeah. Going back to yourself at 25 is a big deal, right? But actually, the next step number after 29 is zero. So 29 loops to zero. And what that means is when you are at the crest of the edge of power, like where you're pushing the envelope of power, your only way to ground that is to go back to square zero. So you go back to where you began, and
Right.
that's how you yield the power of 29. So
And
you're
how long are
exactly
these
on track.
cycles? This cycle that we're talking about right now, how long is that cycle again? I know you already said it, I think.
Oh no, it's no problem. Pluto strikes back is what we're calling it. Lasts until November 22nd, I think. 22nd. So right before Thanksgiving, Pluto will go back into Aquarius, and Pluto will say for 24 years, okay, we've taught all them about the power thing. Now let's go build. Now let's raise our vibe for the next 24 years. So then, it's focused on raising our vibration, Aquarius.
So this is a big deal, is
It,
like,
it's huge. The last time we had this event was the American Revolution, and the what was not the colonies, saying, Britain, you are abusing your power. Your taxation without representation. We will no longer tolerate you abusing your power. And so it started a war that continued into Pluto and Aquarius. In fact, when Pluto was in the early degrees of Aquarius and raising the vibration, I think it was, George Washington was depressed. We were all worried that we're going to have our heads on spikes. We were in a low vibration by being the rebels that stepped away from the power. And so for the first few years of Pluto, it's just like, come on, out of the gutter. Come on, lemons in the lemonade. We can turn all these problems into solutions. And so that's what it's going to be. So what I predict is the same thing is a revolutionary war. We're going to have a president that's going to create a war, no matter what. When I say a war, I mean, a percentage is happy, a percentage is not happy. It doesn't matter who wins at this point. It doesn't matter. The United States will now be fractioned inside of itself, like Humpty Dumpty falling off a wall. And we will have to spend, until Pluto gets to 4 degrees, we will be a mess, a bit of a mess.
and how
So
long does that 4 degrees
it's a
take?
good question. I haven't looked it up recently. It's one of those things I look up, at night because I'm curious and then I don't write it down or anything. But um, I will tell you this: the Revolutionary War ended about 2 days after Pluto went to four. So four Aquarius is a Grandmaster step of Aquarius. So once Pluto hit the Grandmaster step, everything found its place. And so I would predict the same thing. So on the next show, I'll have that available. I'll tell you when that four is going to be. And I think it's like 2027. And my gut wants to say 2027 because Pluto moves slow, really slow.
And what are some like I'm assuming that you forecast or plan your entire life around these sort of things, right? Is this something that most people you would advise them to do, or is this like how would you tell, like, let's say your sister or a good friend to incorporate this knowledge into their life?
I would say I probably give them like the basic advice. If you like for Pluto 29, I would say for the next until the end of November, till Thanksgiving, you have to check your feelings before you do something because 29 is to for the nine to basically respond to the feelings, responding to the feeling versus responding to the world. So the way out of the way to get straight A's on this is if something happens like you find out that you know your taxes are going to go up or something like that, you get really upset about this happening. You're really upset that your taxes are being raised, let's say property taxes. If you go write your congressman and start a fight with the world, you did not respond to your feelings first. You actually tried to solve your feelings by doing something in the world. You didn't calm yourself and bring yourself to neutral first. You tried to solve your feelings outside of you. That's an abuse of power. That's not how the matrix works. The matrix works from the inside out. You try to do it from the outside in. That's basically sneaking illegals into the consciousness. So in a case like that, by not listening to your feelings, whatever you're doing will decay at a very rapid rate. So Pluto makes things decay at a rapid rate.
Mm.
Um, because it basically, the myth is that, here's the myth. So you're on Earth, and let's say you're making a big mistake. Well, first Mars will come by and slap you up the side, like, hey, what are you doing? Mars will slap you, right? Then you reach Jupiter, and Jupiter will inform you, okay, here's the reason why you've got to stop this, okay? If you still keep screwing up, then it goes to Saturn, and Saturn's like, I command that you stop this now. This is the law. You must stop. This is the final law. You better do it. Then Uranus will trip your ass, right, and say, you've got it. I don't know if you paid attention. Now you're getting off the ground. Uranus will break you down and make you get back up. And in that breakdown, getting up, hopefully you saw it. Then Neptune will give you like a crazy vivid dream or like symbolism in your life that's undeniable in a movie or in a song and give it all symbolically. And if you still don't do it, then Pluto's like, you got two chances here, kid. You either do it or you're dead. Like it basically will ruin the path because Pluto represents where God has had enough. It's like God will tolerate till Pluto. And then at Pluto, sorry, you're holding back the human race. You either change or you reincarnate, is sort of how it all works energetically. And I can't remember the leading question to that gave you that insight, but it's an interesting perspective on the planets and how issues work all the way out. Oh, the decay. So what happens is if you don't follow the spiritual lesson, then whatever you're doing incorrectly will just start falling apart. Like people will cancel, you'll lose the sale, Visa will put you on hold because you had suspicious stuff. Like everything and anything will start to just close down and close you out. So, and this is the way it works. So there's been times, when like things get canceled with your tours, our stuff. And when that happens, I'm like, oh, okay, that fell apart so quickly. I must have crossed a Pluto line. I must be veering into, territory that's being marked for deletion. And in a way, it's protecting you. It's saying, no, you can't go here anymore. Like people are going to die over here. Like get out of here. Cancel this. Have this happen. And so it seems like bad luck, but it's really an enforcement of absolute spiritual law.
It's crazy how you talk about the planets. That would be exactly how I would talk about our chakras and us processing an experience and how the experience goes through our body. It starts in the root, and you're concerned with safety, and then you process it different energy center in your body.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting to hear you talk about the planets that way, because there is some sort of underlying thread that I will find interest in making those connections as well. And there's even mudras that our fingers are connected to certain planets as well. So you can do meditations where you're connecting to these energies with kriyas. I do want to go back to one thing. Did you have anything to say about that?
Just that I find that the whole universe works on the same principles. And it's, I think, a lot of our work with Human Garage, and it's like you have so much philosophy you bring to Human Garage and different disciplines and backgrounds that you have seen like the translation of it in other languages. And I think part of where we're going is we're going to sort of crack the code to everything. We're going to figure out how everything's connected to everything here in this next 25 years.
Yeah, and to make another correlation, when you said you get to love yourself and love yourself again, that immediately made me think of this quote. I forget who said it, but it's something along the lines of you can find the divine in the breath within the breath. And
Oh,
and,
wow.
and it's like the breath that's within the breath, and that would mean different things to different people. But to love yourself and love yourself again, can you elaborate a little bit more on what you meant by that? Because yeah, it was just very interesting.
Hmm. Well, I think it's a condition of our time, first of all, to some degree, and the density in which we live in. So I don't know if once we're ascended that will be the formula per se, because we will not become 3D. We will become something else. So
Hmm.
it might change, disclaimer. But what we are is a population that was way high in Atlantis and Lemuria, and we fell all the way to the bottom.
Right.
And so what tends to happen is you get hurt. What do? You love yourself to bring yourself back to normal, right? So you bring yourself back to normal. I feel better. I love myself. But remember, you fell from Atlantis. So you're way down in the well. You may have fixed your sprained ankle, but you're not moving toward God. You just fixed the pothole, and that was it. So what I realized early on was, and Virgos are the healers, and Virgos will love you and love you more until you are healed. They'll just keep throwing, tea and lemon and all this stuff. They just like over care for you. Love more, love more, love more, love more, love more, which to them is work. You know what I mean? By the way. But so the point is like if you want to heal and grow, both, like grow out of this condition that caused the damage, because if you do something silly at this level and you fall down, okay, get back up. But remember, something silly happened at this level because this level didn't have enough love to begin with. So it's two scoops of love, to get out to ascend always and never stop. But there's another aspect to this too, and that is the more love you carry, the wiser and more experienced your soul is. So it's rumored that in heaven, old souls are really big globes of light, and
Mm.
new souls are very tiny globes of light as they fly around in heaven. Allegedly, these sprites fly around in heaven. So tiny sprites are kids, and big balls flying around are like ancient wisdom people. And the idea there is you've expanded your light. So love yourself and love yourself some more. I also see as the expansion of your light. You are becoming a brighter light because you're just packing on the light and you're never going to deficit. It's always one for me and one more for me.
And that's, yeah, the light spheres, the what I understand about beings of light or enlightenment is as we become disembodied. And you mentioned densities, and right now we're in a density where we're a physical individual body
Yep.
that is existing in physical space, and we're traveling linearly through time, and we're all having individual experiences. And eventually, when we become a big sphere of light, like that's made up of a bunch of. It's so my understanding about old soul, new soul is not necessarily just speaking of time, because within time there's more lifetimes, there's more experience. So those would grow with experiences of lifetime. So we can think of ourselves as a soul, as like an individual soul, but that is a part of some sort of bubble. And the little bubbles and the big bubbles are kind of existing within each other, but at a certain densities, you see them as separate, even though at another density, it's just all a part of.
Bright and shades and yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah,
And that's how
totally.
it's all connected, even with the planets, because the planets are separated from us in distance. But I mean, that's just from our perspective. There's a separateness. In our science, there's a separateness. But at a different level of awareness, it's all connected. It's all having influence.
In the immediate moment. Yeah,
Yes.
everywhere. Yeah, totally. It's in the immediate moment. And I had
Which
a point and I lost it. I'll bring it back up
yeah,
if I remember it. But
yeah, someone like you can read that map and share it with us in our digestible English language, which is not encompassing the totality of what it actually is, but it's nice that you're doing that. You're translating that down into language that we can do something with.
totally. And I want to make a point to you, many lifetimes. Many lifetimes does not mean that you actually grow bigger as a ball of light, because if you don't love yourself more in that lifetime, then you're net zero when you leave. You haven't grown at all. You've just repeated, filled, which is part of what the dark ages were, in my opinion. The dark ages were, we can't seem to get ahead ever. It's like we take a step ahead, bubonic plague. We take a step ahead, Roman Catholic Church. We're just continually knocked down. We can never do love and love ourselves some more. Light could never proliferate. There was never hope. There was never like a shining light around the corner that guided us. It was the darkest time of humans ever. Now, they say the dark ages are due to us losing all of the materials and writing and losing all the history and all the cords from the past to the future. And so they say, oh, it's dark because we disconnected. There's no knowledge there. There's no wisdom. But for those who experience those lifetimes, it was hell. You know.
Yeah, I mean, that's our scientific explanation, our reductionist explanation can also still be valid, but it doesn't invalidate the mystical woo-woo ancient knowledge of why these things are happening. I mean,
Yeah.
there all over the world there's cultures that have calendars that are tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands
Hmm.
of years long that they're tracking. And the question is like, what are they tracking? They're not tracking the solar weather, which is a year long, like the cycle of the seasons. They're tracking something else. They're tracking some other energetic shifts of frequency that go on these cycles.
Huge cycles. I mean, the biggest cycle we know is 26,000 years. That's the precession of the equinox. So one Earth year galactically is really 26,000 years. So the Earth has to go around the sun 26,000 something, something, something amount of times before the Earth turns 1 year old, 2 years old.
25,920 years,
There,
yeah.
yeah, there you
Oh,
go. Thank you. I never remember that
crazy.
number. Yeah. And
For
so
some reason, I remember it.
it's rumored that Atlantis fell the last when Earth was 1 year younger. The last 25,000, that was when Atlantis fell, and that's when civilization fell. So we all, what our guides tell us is the whole like caveman and all that stuff. I don't know if that's really what happened. What we understand happened is the smart people went underground to live, and the apes who were left there started evolving, right, on
Which,
their own.
if you think about it, us not living inside the earth, like us on the surface, it would be like us living outside, but we're living in houses because we're protecting ourselves from the cosmic storms that could be happening outside.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had an ability to travel through stone and make your own light underground, then that's exactly where you would go. And at a different density and an ascended level of where we are right now, that would be possible. So it makes sense that you're in the earth. I
Mm-hmm.
used to live in Mount Shasta, and I've at like I've astro projected into the earth
Into the
after a
mountain.
week. Yeah, and I don't have much memory of what happened when I got there, but I definitely remember going in and all of that. And there was booby traps and weird stuff that I like passed etherically through, and I needed to be in a state of trust and love. Otherwise, there's no way I was getting through the boundaries of physical matter that I got through. And it was all just I was just like joyriding. Like I was just a passive observer watching myself do this.
Mm.
That was after a week of meditating. I was with a group of people that travel around the planet, activating sacred sites.
Ah.
It was a week with them, and we eventually hiked up to Mount Shasta with the tent that I carried in the snow, and we all put our heads together, and we were supposed to be doing something with spinning energies around the planet, but 10 seconds in, I just shot out of my body into this dream world which was interesting. Uh, and
Yeah.
then I went back and I lived in Mount Shasta for like a year because that experience was just so powerful. During COVID, that's where we went.
Oh, wow. Cool. Mount Shasta is, the Earth's genitals. It's the root chakra. So it's literally where like life starts on Earth. That's where the energy flows is up through Mount Shasta, and then down the Rocky Mountains is the spinal cord, all the way down California into South America to the solar plexus, which is Lake Titicaca. Lake Titicaca is the solar plexus. It is the sacral. Excuse me. So Lake Titicaca. So you have root Mount Shasta, and then it goes down to sacral, which is our sexual fertility energy of Mother Earth, and that's what the Mayans and Titicaca and all that. They're all around the sexual creation energy, the raw creation energy of the Earth. And so allegedly you can go to these places, and I'll tell you, Mount Shasta. So I'm a root chakra ruled person. I'm a net nine. So if your step number adds to a nine, nets to a nine, then you are ruled by the root. And believe it or not, that's a sophisticated thing too. Like to go back to the root and bring it up to another level, right? And that's part of what I do. But when I pilgrim to Saint Mount Shasta 2 times, my pilgrimage, each time I had a full breakdown, a full energetic breakdown. My whole ego just went to nothing. I turned to goo. I felt weak and powerless. It was like kryptonite for my Superman. Like I was just nada. But what I found was it broke down because ego is all about resisting and being strong. And Shasta was like, oh no, you're getting naked, honey. You're with Mother Earth. Like you're just rough, all those clothes, all that stuff ripped off of me, and I found myself being very vulnerable. So I wonder, you're a Libra, okay? And Libra is the throat chakra in our system, the chakra, not the body. The body is Taurus is the throat of the body, but the soul body is Libra behind the throat chakra. And so the throat chakra and the root chakra are opposite chakras in our system. They counterbalance. The throat counterbalances. We all know it. Boys, your root chakra gets you in trouble. You got to talk your way out of it. Like this solves when this fucks up, right? And so they counterbalance. So what I find to be interesting is when you had this shut down with COVID, you went running to the root, Mount Shasta, to rebalance your throat chakra, really, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I was very attracted to being there, and I
Oh,
loved it there. It was my wife that pulled us out. Said we need to get back to civilization. I can't be just sitting here in the woods talking to nobody all day long. Um,
yeah.
that's interesting that so Libra's our voice or our throat chakra. So, and you just mentioned your root. Does that mean that we are more in our alignment if we're operating from those energy centers?
Yeah, it's like a double. Oh, it's a purification. So, I mean, for me, it was a whole process. My ego was broken down. I was humbled. All my defenses were taken down, and then I was shown a new way to take strength over the
Oh
old
wait,
ways.
really quick. Carolina, my wife, just said she's a net nine too, and she really like had the same sort of uh, resistance to being in Mount Shasta. I feel she was like had this like she wanted to get out of there the whole time we were in there, and I was like, no, this is amazing. I want to be here.
Yeah, I mean, for you, it was it was completing you. Mount Shasta was completing you, giving you the side of yourself you don't focus on normally, and so giving you like the legs to walk, right? But for your wife and I, we were cut at the knees, like
Yeah, she was
because
just
we've
tolerating me.
overgrown. Yeah, yeah. It was interesting, and it was both times it's happened. And she's a majesty. Mount Shasta, you really. I mean, I don't know about you, but I sit there staring at her like a pretty girl. I just sit there. You're just
Yeah,
like staring at her beauty. She's just so perfect. Her snow, everything is just so perfect. There's a real majesty there. It's definitely the capital of Mother Earth.
it it's an energy. I say it's a tangible energy in the frequency of just the air that you can feel being
Yes.
there. Not
Yeah.
even on the mountain. and just in the city as well.
And for anyone who's done THC, like marijuana, you feel a little stoned. Like colors are brighter. I got the
Yes.
munchies. Like I feel like I'm like just slightly and like slightly on something, slightly turned just a little bit towards cartoon energy. Like it's a little cartoon. It's a little bit. It's just a little surreal. It's not quite real. Is how I experience it.
It's funny because I was trying to remember back 30 years ago or 20 years ago and noticing differences in how like you were just talking about a different place, right? And how it has a different feeling. And then because I was doing some things with the Mandela effect and I was thinking about like how things were in my 20s, and I was noticing a difference in the vibratory nature of reality back then. For me, it almost feels like now is a little bit more brighter and animated than what I remember it was like 20 years ago. I'm not sure if you have anything to say about like, is reality actually shifting? Like it's not just places on Earth that we have different feelings of reality, but it's even times represent different ways that we relate to reality.
100%. Yes. I think, well, actually, it comes back to Virgo. So when you become a victim inside, which you might have done in the Virgo season at age 13 or 18, or, in one of those Virgo seasons, you became a victim, right? At that point, you're in a reality where it's all a reflection of that victimhood. So reality shifts based on what you become on the inside. Mount Shasta and other places sort of bump you up against that false reality and kind of get it to crack so you can see between the cracks of where you have lied to yourself or chosen something is not the best for you. So I do believe, yes, there are reality upgrades for sure, 100%. And there's also timeline shifts where you have a scene change, right? Like life suddenly feels different, not on a major level, but it just feels different on a subtle level. And I think that's getting on a new timeline.
Why do you think that is? So the Mandela effect, there's a huge one that I'm going through right now, which is because we
Hmm.
have avocado trees in our backyard, and I just learned that now Haas avocados, which the avocados that we have are now spelled different. It's
Oh,
H
wow.
it's HASS, and it's actually pronounced Haas as opposed to the old spelling of HAAS. And yeah, so I'm going through that right now and kind of blew my mind. There's 50 other I can rattle off right now of movie quotes and songs that are different now, and
Hmm.
the Monopoly monocle guy is like there's no monocle. But do you have any gnosis on that? Like, because you mentioned timelines and reality shifting, like, is that the reason why you would say the Mandela effect is happening?
I would think the Mandela effect is the evidence that you have switched timelines. So when you were on the other timeline, it was spelled that way. On this timeline, it's spelled a different way. And if anything, it's proof that you've switched.
Hmm.
You're not in
Exactly.
the same one.
I
Yeah.
concur.
Um, yeah. And there's many switches, I think, that happen. We've gone through a lot of timeline shifts this year, actually. Um, and I can't remember where they were exactly, but there was one around the eclipse in April. There was another timeline shift after Unite the Light. And these timeline shifts are basically where basically the choice becomes very clear. And it's a free will choice. The free will choice is where you feel you belong, you know? So you have this sort of, which spelling do you prefer? I mean, there's probably some moment where it's something like that. And the people that prefer this spelling migrate over to, this timeline. The people who have the old spelling stay in this timeline. So it's usually like a very mundane choice that's the ticket onto the new timeline. And in astrology, we think we can predict when those timeline exits are.
And so then you're under I I don't even know what to call it, but it sounds to me like you're saying that we're all traveling through different timelines, and we're meeting here now, and I could go this way and you could go that way.
Well, timeline is frequency. So yes, what you're saying. So like, so heat is frequency, right? So you can be running a 99-degree temperature, and I can be running a 98-degree temperature. I'm looking right at you. You look hot to me, right? You're on a different timeline than me, but our timelines are coexisting in the same space time. So, and this, you see this, another example of this is like you've been driving on the highway, you look over, there's like someone smoking a crack pipe, passing you at 70 miles an hour. You're like, how the hell in his timeline or hers do they get away with that? Like, how does that happen? How does it even exist in my reality? And the answer is it actually doesn't. It was just the timeline just zipped by your reality in that moment. There's a parallel in that moment, right? So I think, Bashar, who is a psychic medium, I don't know if you know him, that channels a gray alien, which is actually his future self coming back to talk to him. Paradoxical, great idea there. Good movie idea if it's not real, but it is. He says that time. So, boy, it's been a long time since I've seen you. What he says is, I haven't seen you since the last timeline. So he says time, the concept of time is actually the space between two timelines. We're actually hopping. He says that there's like major, well, I'm deducting. I haven't heard him say this, but I'm deducting from what he says is that there are some major timelines that everyone's holding on to, right? So you, I, Gary, all of Human Garage, we're all holding on to the timeline, the highway that says the earth will be saved and we're going to be okay. That's the trunk. We're on that highway. And there's another highway right by us. We can see the traffic. It's all bumper to bumper where they think that everything's going to shut down and not work, right? So we have these trunk lines. But then within the highway, we have several lanes we can choose, right? So many of us on the same highway can choose to go in the fast lane, the slow lane, maybe go up on a bridge that goes above the lane. So those are all sub-timelines that we sub-select under a trunk timeline. So what Bashar says is time as we know it is that we are switching lanes up to 100 times a day.
Right.
The small ones are switching like 100 times. The trunks are like switching 10 to 15 years you get on a trunk. Like the exits don't come often, because you got a lot of experience to gather. What it is that you have to gather enough experience that teaches you, oh shit, I'm on the wrong timeline. So it takes a while. It takes a long time of threading between the small ones to go, I think we're on the wrong trunk, right? Or that moment.
Yes. And that's where that example of looking over and you're peering into another, like you're witnessing somebody else on a different timeline. And
yes,
we can grab onto that or we can just let it keep on going. I think we should end on that high note.
Yeah, we should.
Unless you have anything else to add before we go.
Just one more point to your point, which is most of the time you see the timeline, the other timeline, because it affirms you're not on it. So we need to know we're not on the wrong one. So we see the wrong one to affirm the right. And so that's really why I think God couples the timelines together like that for contrast. And contrast brings wisdom and knowledge.
That's amazing. That's also why we might be noticing the voices in our head that we wish weren't saying them anymore. Because we're like, well, I know I can see that. It's no longer me. And it can be there, but I'm not listening.
Well, you've probably begun to exit, but it's a long exit. So, you still see it for quite a while before you're finally into a whole new, out of that range. Yeah. But it's interesting stuff, Rob.
Super amazing, vision there and the image. That was cool. All right.
And that went quick.
Everybody.
That hour went quick. I think we skipped timelines. I don't think we did the whole show. I don't have to go back and watch. So
yeah.
One more episode with us, right?
Yeah. Next week, guys, we're back. We'll see you all then.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ra. Thanks, everyone.